here we have two models of skeletal muscle tissue. So unfortunately, it's kind of hard to see both of them in one frame, so we're going to do this smaller model first. Here you can see some of the major characteristics of skeletal muscle tissue. First of all, these cells, which we call fibers, are long and cylindrical in shape. You can see that here. You can also see that they are characterized by striations, represented here. These are from the I and A bands in the sarcomeres, and we're going to pay more attention to that and talk about it in here, in this larger model. Another characteristic of skeletal muscle tissue fibers is that they're going to be multinucleated, and all that means is that there are going to be multiple nuclei, like here and here, and these nuclei are going to be found towards the periphery of the cell or the fiber. So instead of being deep within that cell, it's going to be more towards the outer cell membrane. So on this small model, let's see if I can get my pointer. On this smaller model, here we have the sarcolemma, which is basically just a sheath that encapsulates and surrounds the muscle fibers. We also have those striations that we were talking about, the nuclei, multiple, and that cylindrical, elongated shape. So that's the small model. Here on the larger model, we're going to go into a little bit more in-depth explanation of skeletal muscle as well as contraction of skeletal muscle tissue. Now this is really just a cursory overview, so please note that there's more information to go over when we cover this information in lecture. But for now, from our lab manual, we'll want to identify 4 specific components of skeletal muscle tissue. So all of this right here is a muscle fiber, a skeletal muscle fiber. It's encapsulated and surrounded by that sarcolemma, which can be seen here. We talked about it on that smaller model. So this is the sarcolemma. We also see sarcomeres, which are the functional unit of skeletal muscle. It's what exerts contractile forces, and it's bordered by Z-discs, which can be found in the light I bands of the sarcomere. So right here you see some lighter sections. Here's a light I band, here's another light I band. So this running down the middle of it would be that Z-disc. So there's another Z-disc. So between these two Z-discs would be one sarcomere. And again, that sarcomere is the functional unit of a muscle fiber. It's what contracts to, in essence, move your muscle. So these are the light I bands right here, which would make this the dark A band. When we talk more about this in lecture, we'll go into a further explanation of all of this. But for lab, just know that this is a sarcomere between these two Z-discs. And now moving on, let's focus on the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So a sarcoplasmic reticulum is a type of smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and it specifically stores calcium ions that will be used in contraction. So this right here, it almost looks like a spider web covering these fibrils. But this is our sarcoplasmic reticulum. Right here, we have something called T-tubules. In essence, that just stands for transverse tubules. These transverse tubules, or T-tubules, are actually extensions of the sarcolemma. So this extension is what allows all of the nerve-generated impulses from the axon, like this one right here. Here's an axon of neuron. So it generates a nerve impulse, and the T-tubules, which are the extensions of the sarcolemma, allow for that impulse to travel down into the deep sections and regions of this muscle fiber. That's what allows the entire muscle fiber to contract as one, rather than having these outside sections contract and nothing really happening here in the middle. So these T-tubules are very, very important. Just as an aside, so that you recognize what you're looking at, right over here, I mentioned before, this is an axon. You see the myelin sheath right here surrounding the axon, And the nerve impulse is going to travel along this and then signal to the actual skeletal muscle tissue. This right here is the nucleus of the skeletal muscle cell. And I think another thing you might want to know, that these little red guys interspersed throughout here, these are all mitochondria.